Welcome everyone to, I think, what is our sixth podcast. Today we're exploring a crucial aspect of professional growth and development in the form of mentoring. Whether starting out in your testing career or whether you're experienced, having a mentor can make a significant difference in your life and in your career. And mentors aren't only there to provide guidance and knowledge. They often inspire and challenge us to maybe go beyond what we think is possible. So we've got our usual audience here. Is everyone doing well?
Yeah, good, thanks, Liam.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Leon.
Yeah, I'm also doing good.
Amazing. Okay, so just in terms of opening the conversation or getting the conversation started. So maybe let's start at the beginning. Could each of you share maybe how you first got into mentorship within software testing? What motivated you to seek out a mentor or maybe become one yourself?
Oh, well, I will start. When I started my career, so I didn't seek out a mentor. Actually, the company that I worked for, they assign a career counselor for you just to guide you in the process. So that's how I started with the mentor and mentee program.
Yeah, and for me, it was like probably when I was in Kinetic when I worked there. So there was a senior engineer who I kind of looked up to and aspired to kind of, well, I wish I could get to the kind of level that person was at. So kind of not a formal mentee, but took a lot of guidance from him and a lot of his recommendations, and we worked together. So that was my kind of first accidental mentor, I guess.
Yeah, I think in my case, I don't think it was a very formal process. I think as a junior person stepping into the software testing, you look up to the senior analysts and the team leads, and they, in a way, just naturally become your mentors. And yeah, as you progress through your career, in a way, people start doing the same and looking up to you. And I think it's sort of a soft landing until you eventually become like a test lead or a test manager yourself. And I think that responsibility grows. So to me, it was sort of a gradual move from a mentee into a mentorship role.
Yeah, interesting question. I'm trying to think back. When I started testing, at least in South Africa, wasn't a very big thing. So now I'm giving my age. So when I started, there weren't many senior people or seasoned professionals in the testing world in South Africa, especially. So my mentorship engagement was more peer type mentorship thing. So I went to seek out people, my peers who I felt were a step ahead, and tried to latch onto them. And then through that process, organically, they became mentors. But it wasn't an official thing, as Stefan said as well. And throughout my career, I kind of tried to do that, to find peers and like-minded people that I can latch onto and have conversations with.
What would you say are the most important skills in someone within the software testing landscape that maybe lends itself more towards mentorship than others? So what are those important aspects where a mentor can really make a difference in a person's life or person's career?
Yeah, so I think a couple there. So I think one would probably be like quite early on in your career journey, because testing's so broad, right? It's like where you start off as a junior analyst or something equivalent to that, and then where do you go to? I'm going to become a performance tester, or I want to become a manager, or I want to become an environment, whatever that scope is. So I think there's real benefit to finding someone who's maybe done a few of those different roles to kind of guide you, like this is what you can expect, to kind of help you make that informed decision. And also I think when you're hitting like I guess career transition points, when you're going from like a junior to a senior, or you're becoming a lead for the first time, is people that are mentoring you around that transition period, because it's very different going from an analyst to becoming a lead, running a squad of people, and there's a different skill set. So I think that's an element that's really interesting. But for both of them, it's like interpersonal skills are massive in those. Like you need that skill set to help help construct the dialogue.
Yeah, I agree with that, Steve. So I was just thinking whilst you were talking, I've met many very technical people in my career, and those weren't necessarily great mentors because they're very technical and they know their subject matter very well, but they couldn't really relate to the problems I'm having or couldn't give advice because they're already there and they know what they are doing. So that interpersonal skills and someone that's recognized in your team or your organization that people are recognizing this person knows what they are doing when it comes to testing. I kind of feel that's also important, that other people see that person and recognize their skills. And then I generally go there and say, all right, I can see that you know what you are doing and you're also a good person to actually get that message across. So that's kind of where I'm going from a mentorship perspective. Obviously, technical skills are important. It's always important to have that, but that's not necessarily the most important part when it comes to a mentorship kind of arrangement.
Yeah. So I think if you're going to be a mentor, also you need to have the passion, to teach and to coach other people as well. You need to have the commitment to develop other people. So as Johan just said, it should not just be about technical skills. So you need to love teaching.
And you need to make time to make sure you have the necessary time, because I think being a proper mentor takes time. I think it's not something you just do in half an hour and then that person is coached up. I think it's typically when it's more on an individual level, it's a long-term engagement. You have to be, you have to have that helpful mindset. You need to be prepared. You need to be approachable. And it doesn't help you trying to be a mentor and every time somebody tries to reach you, you've got that I'm too busy kind of attitude, and you need to be patient and show commitment. I think there's a lot of the softer skills that are just as important as the technical skills and the experience that you bring to the table.
Yeah, you both raised good points, Mamatla. You started with it. And I think it's important to find someone that wants to be a mentor. So in organizations, often we set up structures and we ask people to be mentors. You're a senior person, you will now mentor 3 others. But that person's not necessarily in it. You said it, Mamatla and Stefan. It's something that it's a person who actually wants to share the knowledge, wants to grow the person they are mentoring. So I think that's one of the key skills as well, or the key attributes, is that willingness to put in the effort and to mentor someone.
But then the flip side of that is also true, Jan, in that I think there are a lot of people that say I want a mentor, but they're not necessarily motivated to put in the time and the effort that actually is required. So there's a commitment that's required from both sides. I think it feels like if you're the person seeking a mentor, maybe you're more invested, you're more motivated. If you get given a mentor, maybe then it's slightly different, and you almost feel like it's getting forced on you. But what we've discussed thus far feels like it's very much mentoring more junior people. But of course, mentoring doesn't only talk to juniors. There's also mentoring more senior people, and we discussed this internally briefly yesterday in terms of even executives and senior people, they still have mentors. People have business coaches, people have life coaches, etc. So mentoring never really stops. And being a mentee never necessarily stops. So on that sort of path, how do you feel your mentoring techniques or your mentoring approach needs to change given the seniority level? So if you're mentoring a junior versus someone more senior, what are those subtleties maybe that you need to apply?
I think it's as you mentor more senior people, and then it becomes less lecturing and more mentoring, right? So the more senior people, the more senior the person is that you are actually mentoring, the more you need to be open to feedback and constructive criticism and debating, rather than just, I will lecture you because this is the way it has to be. I'm a senior, I know this is the way. And I'm not saying do that with juniors either, but a junior person will not necessarily push back as much as a senior person would. If I'm in a mentoring session with Steve, I would hope that he will push back and debate, and through that we will both learn. So I think the more senior the person is that you're mentoring, the more you can also learn from that. So in a senior situation, it's kind of both ways mentoring, while in a little bit more junior one, it's more lecturing, for the lack of a better word.
Yeah, I think I kind of expand on that. I think like when you're a junior, you don't know what you need to know. So the mentor's got to kind of help you craft okay, it sounds like you're deficient in this. We're putting to talk to you about all that. I think at a senior level, it's much more of a sounding board. Like Johan said, I want to tell me what you know about this. I need to understand this problem and just discuss this topic with you and get your perspective on it and my perspective on it and kind of come up with it. I think it becomes a much more peer-to-peer, a constructive debate more than anything else.
What's the difference between a buddy and a mentor? Because those terms are often interchangeably used, but in my mind, those are actually two separate things.
Isn't a buddy more of a peer, somebody that's almost on the same level as you, and you might know a little bit more? Like, I always think of a buddy when a new starter starts at a company. You've got a buddy, it might not necessarily be the team lead, but it's somebody almost on your level. But it's almost like that, more like a bi-directional kind of learning curve, where a mentor might be a little bit more one way in a way, you sharing more knowledge from your side.
And then I think a lot of what we've discussed is kind of alluding to one-on-one mentoring, but mentoring takes on different, I guess, models or different ways of mentoring. So, I mean, in some way, lunch and learn sessions and those types of things are also mentoring sessions, but it's on a much bigger scale. It's not that one-to-one. Stephen gave an example yesterday that he often gets contacted on LinkedIn where people want to be mentored, but it's not very scalable because, like we said at the start, if you're actually invested as a mentor, it's gonna be time consuming. It's gonna take time, and to have 10 or 15 people that you're mentoring is very difficult because you're never gonna do a good job. So, are there ways to mentor? I'm going to say mentor at scale, or is it important to keep your mentees to a very small number? So, is there a maximum that you can mentor?
Yeah, I think if you split it into two sections, I think the topic I had was if 30, 40 people are messaging me on LinkedIn every month or something to ask for me to help them with something, I don't have the time to be able to do that, right? But I still want to help those people. So there's an element of it changes from mentoring to sharing best practice and sharing training material, like the lunch and learn sessions that we run internally with the company or our community practice that we're building up, those kinds of things to the wider audience. But I do think mentoring, because it is so time intensive, you need to build that relationship up with someone. I think there is definitely a cap on how many people you can realistically do that. Like one or two in my head. I think any more than that, you're just not going to be able to give those people the time that they need, because it's such an intensive task.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think Stevie said it well. There's a difference between mentoring and teaching. And in a teaching or lecturing, the amount of people doesn't really matter because there's not that feedback from the audience or the people that you are teaching necessarily. Yes, one or two questions, but a mentoring thing is a real relationship building thing, and the more you build trust in a mentorship relationship, the better you can mentor, and the better the questions would be as well. And it's very time intensive. Leon, you alluded to the time and the effort to put in there, and from both ends, right? So what I've seen is that people want you to mentor them, as I did with Steve, but they expect you to be the Formula One driver, and they're trying to to learn how to drive a car, right? And they don't understand that there's this whole 5 to 10 years that you have to put in before you can drive Formula One cars. Well, for me, never. But it's not, if Steve is my mentor, tomorrow I can drive Formula One cars, right? It's really not that. It is, I need to understand that I'm here, and it's not an instant thing. I need to build, and I have to spend the time. And because of that, mentoring is a very time-consuming activity. And then that's why, Steve, I agree with you. It's just 1 or 2 people that you can really invest that time and effort in.
Okay, so I think the other way, if you look at other spheres like business, we get like books where, people will write about their experiences, from when they started to where they eventually succeed. They also put in the mistakes and, some tips how to overcome the challenges. In testing, we don't have such books. Whenever we get a book, it's just a technical guide, which we can also just get from, like ISTQB. So people like Leon, we're still waiting for books.
Fun.
Yeah, I'm listening to what you guys are saying. I just want to. I think there's mentorship is important, but a certain chunk of it we can get away with that term you used, mentorship at scale, Leon, when you spoke about like public collateral, using things like SharePoint or Confluence to put there's a lot of collateral we can use that people can help themselves without even having a personal mentor. That can be tool training, standards and processes, templates, or even career paths. Like in terms of training, if you as a company have a clear career path showing the employees, you can go into this technical section or that section, and this can split into that. There's already a lot of thought that you can sort of or help people in the business to think about where they want to go with their careers. But or even things like a guild where we have like Teams chats, for example, where you can post a question and everybody's helping each other. It could be that I'm busy today, but maybe somebody else has got that specific piece of knowledge. So there's a way that we can mentor each other, but it's a bit more at scale. But I definitely think there will always be a place for that personal mentorship, because if you do it at scale, yes, it can help, but it's not at that personal. You don't necessarily get that sense of somebody, giving you personal feedback specific to your growth plan, giving you the support or encouragement, which can help build your confidence and motivation. So, but I do think it's, I just maybe reiterate what the others said. It's not one or the other. I think both are very important.
And again, and maybe I'm showing my age now, but it feels like mentoring back in the day was very much office based. You sit next to each other, you kind of watch what someone's doing, or you following instruction, but it's very collaborative. How is remote working, and the fact that most people now work remotely and they're isolated in their own room or office or study, how has that changed the whole mentoring landscape, and how much more difficult is it now to mentor someone in that new way versus the old, I'm going to say traditional way, which I just mentioned, which may not be the traditional way at all anymore, but just in terms of that example?
Yeah, it's a good use case. So my first mentor was obviously in an office lab environment, so I was interacting with them on a day-to-day basis and getting kind of understanding how they worked and how they got to where they did. And then, but I've also mentored people in companies remotely as well, and there's definitely a difference. I think the challenges are it can take longer to create that peer-to-peer relationship, that personal kind of style of how you communicate with each other. It's going to take longer because it's going to be on Teams chats, it's going to be on messages, it's going to be distributed throughout the day. So effectively, it's going to take a longer period of time before you kind of gel as a mentor and mentee. But at the same time, you're probably going to have a little bit more flexibility to talk about other aspects that aren't constrained to being in an office environment. So some of the stuff I often post about is general stuff in my day that's helped me. So going for walks is one of the things I spoke about recently on my post, where I recommend it to anyone I'm speaking to. Is like, if you're struggling to think about a problem, just go for a 5 to 10 minute walk and come back. Right, like that little tip, you can't really talk about that in an office environment, but when you're working remotely, everyone can attest to, yeah, we sit at our desk too often, we don't really get out. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Why would I do that? So I think there's pros and cons to both, but I think time is probably the biggest difference, I would say, of how long it takes to gel that relationship together.
Yeah, I guess in the old days, you could just take a walk together. Let's go take a walk outside for 5 minutes. We don't have that luxury anymore. So if you look at, and maybe let's go back to the example of maybe a more junior person. So a person just starting out in the testing world, and maybe that's that person's first testing job. What would you say are the aspects of testing which really lends itself to mentorship and mentoring? So it feels to me like, yes, you've got the obvious things like, I don't know, test automation, etc. But what are those main things which really lend itself to mentoring? Let me put it a different way. Where does a mentor make the biggest impact into a junior's career?
Yeah, I think that's a better way, maybe a bit of rephrasing the question. I think for me, it was like the layer underneath that you don't see, that's not in textbooks, a bit like what Matt spoke about, is we could talk about how to better design a test case or how to like run your script more efficiently. But by the way, sometimes you'll have an interaction with, let's say, a product owner, and the interaction will push what you want to get out of the quality of the product, and you're going to have a difficult conversation. And how do you handle that conversation? How do you frame it? How do you try and get across your point without creating conflict? Those kinds of micro interactions, which is a lot about testing, is trying to tell non-testers, or trying to help non-testers understand our processes and why we do the things we do. And I think that's something that is difficult or hard to comprehend. And mentoring is a good way of bringing that out, because you've had those experiences, and the junior person wouldn't have had them. They wouldn't have had a PM say, "I'm going to go live on this date. I don't care how much testing you got left." Right? And how do you have that difficult conversation? And intern's probably just going to go, "Okay, well, I guess we're going live then." And how do you have that difficult conversation is where your mentor can really come in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think testing is a very social discipline, whether we like it or not, right? And yes, backed up by technical skills, but what makes or breaks a good tester are those social interactions, as Stephen said, within your team, within the business, within the squad, with stakeholders. And it's those kind of things that we really, as mentors, need to bring to the table and let younger testers understand how to deal with situations when they arise, how to talk to people, how to talk to senior people. And especially in the beginning of your career, you're quite scared of project managers and program managers and those kind of titles. And it's how do you still talk to them, get your point across in a way that it makes sense, and you respect them and they respect you. And that's how you really build a career in testing. Like I said, it's a very social discipline. Yes, you can teach them the technical skills, how to do analysis or how to do code, but it's really these interpersonal skills that should be the starting point.
Yeah, it's 100%. And you almost took the words out of my mouth, because what I was going to say is what we've lost with remote working is actually seeing body language and seeing how people interact with each other. Because if you are capable of sitting in a sprint backlog planning session, and you actually have a senior there who is your mentor, and you can see how that person interacts with the rest of the team, that the sort of the body language, that the human element, like you just said, it takes me back to that saying, don't do what I do, listen to what I say. But we know as humans, we do what people do. We mimic people, we mimic that behavior. And that's the one element that, well, not one element, it's one of the elements that we've definitely lost with the fact that we're now having to work remotely, and it's more difficult. The other question I have is, how do you find a mentor? So especially those testers who are maybe working in a smaller company where there's a very small testing team. Potentially, I mean, there are companies where you have a single tester, or maybe 2 testers or 3 testers, but you're all sort of on the same level. How do you find a mentor? How do you go about doing that if you're there and you actually want active mentorship?
Well, I think if you are a test manager, by default in your job description, you will be told that you need to mentor the junior testers. Whether it is the right thing, that we just need to establish that, a test manager by default should be your mentor.
But I think there are organizations that don't even have test managers, Mamatla, where they're starting, they have maybe a junior, an intermediate, or 2 intermediates. There's no test manager. There's no one that they can actually look up to within the organization from a purely testing perspective. So you kind of need to go and look external to your own company. Now, Stephen alluded to it earlier, people emailing him on LinkedIn. So that's obviously one way, but are there other ways? Stefan?
Well, maybe the answer lies in you can have more than one mentor. Maybe in a company you don't necessarily have somebody that's purely in the testing space, but they might be very good in terms of people skills and helping you understand how to deal with certain stakeholders in certain positions. So that could be one way. And then you can find your technical skills in other places. In today's day and age, there are things like so many webinars and forums, and if you want a more personal approach, I guess you can join seminars, and they have a focused mission of building a network and speaking to people and finding like-minded people. So that's one way. It might not be one person that can meet all your needs.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something important there, Stefan, and it's building that network, right? It's reaching out to like-minded people that can assist you in certain aspects. Because you've also said it, a mentor is not necessarily an expert on all the aspects, right? So it's finding that person or group of people that can assist you with that. So there are a couple, to answer your question, and there are a couple of online communities where you can sign up to be a mentor, and then you can also submit if you want to be mentored, right? So then you submit your CV and you go through that. But I think that's one option. The other one is building your network, Stefan, and I think that's the right way to. Where are people that I trust and I see that I agree in a sense to what they are saying on social platforms, for example, or webinars or seminars or wherever you go. So this person, I can listen to them. I agree. I like their style, and then that's reaching out to them, because unfortunately, there's an effort required from you. Right. I hear what you're saying, Martha, in organizations. It's sometimes a bit forced, and that doesn't really happen as you want it to happen. Because if you are forcing someone to be a mentor or mentee, they do it because they have to. If you go search for people that can provide you with answers and help your career, there's already that commitment from you, and that usually works quite well.
Yeah, I agree with both your Stefan and both your points. So like this, there's definitely there's communities, there's conferences, there's meeting people. Like Ministry of Testing, I'm a member of that. I'm on that forum quite reasonably often, as just talking to people, interacting with them. But I'd also touch on a point of one mentor is not going to tick every box. So the example I had was I didn't really understand in a part of my career how a program of work would kind of spin up from start to finish, and how the funding life cycle worked, and where did testing fit into the organization. So I had a mentor who effectively was just a business expert in that particular area of the business, of how programs were spun up and closed down. And just to build that knowledge up, wasn't a tester, but it did help me understand the domain knowledge to understand where the testing problems will lie in that company's structure. So as well, so I think there's an element of don't be afraid to look for mentors that aren't in your craft. They're also really useful as well. And again, it's the same way of networking with the people within the company and outside of it through your social media platforms and forums and Discord, things like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know we're blurring the lines a little bit about between teaching and mentoring and learning. But based on that, Steve, I think throughout your day job and throughout your week, you can also look for people who can help you with aspects that you are struggling now, right? So it doesn't have to be, I'm going to connect to a mentor. It's going to be a 6, 8, 12 months. My thing is, I'm struggling with this. I'm seeing that Steve is doing this well. Steve, show me how you're doing it and just teach me how to do that. Right. So it can also be short-term things. But again, it's you as a person who wants to be mentored looking out for that knowledge and people who will have the knowledge that you want to obtain and connecting with them. And even if it is a peer or someone in your team or someone in your organization or someone outside of the organization, I have a problem not necessarily a problem, I have a need to know something more about a topic. Who am I seeing that actually knows that, and can I connect with them?
Yeah, I think it's important to mention the fact that if you have a mentor, it doesn't mean you can't ask questions of other people and learn from other people. So yes, use that mentor, and you can have a very specific objective with your mentor, but it don't feel that you can only ask that person that question. If someone else has a strength and you can actually tap into that rather, or business knowledge or domain knowledge, etc. Don't wait for the next session with your mentor and sit on that question. Rather be proactive and ask what makes sense.
Yeah, and what's interesting there, Leon, is that someone might know a lot about one thing and a very little about another thing. And you need to realize that as well. So if Steve is my mentor, it's not that he knows everything all the time. I might know more of a certain topic, and the roles may be reversed, right? So don't just see a senior person as a mentor and I have to believe everything they say on every topic. It is, I can also bring something to the table in some instances, or someone else. So I really agree with that.
Yeah, and just expand on that. You could be a test manager and have an analyst who's a mentor in something very specific that analyst is an SME at. So you're a test manager who hasn't done a lot of performance testing, and you're with a senior analyst who's done performance testing for 7 years. They're going to be able to tell you a hell of a lot on how performance testing works and what best practice is, so that it doesn't have to be hierarchical in nature. It's not always the senior person that is the mentor. It can be, yeah, that's the advantage of it. That's one of the real bonuses to especially more junior people. They can mentor up.
Yeah, just to tie into what you're saying there, sometimes you think I have to have 20 years of experience before I can become a mentor. I think everybody has something to offer as a mentor. Even if you're a junior, you might come in with some experience in the world might not be testing specific, but I think it's important to realize that everybody has something to offer, and you don't have to wait 10 years before you should feel confident enough to share your learnings with your peers.
What are potential cons of mentoring or mentorship? So we've talked about mainly the benefits here and what you can get out of it, both from a mentor or mentee perspective. Are there cons to this as well?
We alluded to one earlier where it was like time investment. So there's a time sacrifice to do that. I think the other one is kind of taking down the proverbial cul-de-sac. So you think this person is an absolute expert on automation, so you invest all this time in them, and you actually turn out they don't know anything, or they've got a very poor methodology or very limited understanding of it, and you've spent a lot of time and effort learning something that's of very little value. So, which I think it bridges back to Johan's point earlier of bouncing ideas between multiple individuals and multiple groups, not just one single source of truth.
So choose your mentor wisely.
And also, if you are a mentor, sorry, Leon, if you are a mentor, be open and brave enough to say, I don't know, I'm not the best person for this, right? So often when people approach you and say, oh, I respect you, I want you to be my mentor, you feel like I have to answer everything, I have to guide this person. Be open and say, well, I'm not an expert in this. And maybe let's find someone else that can guide you better.
I couldn't agree more. Be open to being vulnerable and actually showing that you have shortcomings as well, because that in itself actually is a life lesson. No one is perfect. No one knows everything, especially with the junior people looking up to seniors, like you said. Actually showing a junior that you don't know everything, and I still have things to learn as well myself. That's a good skill to learn as well. Sorry, Mamata.
Yeah, I was saying also with the mentees, they also need to put in effort. Before you can go to your mentor, you need to do self-learning. I think when you reach a point where you feel you have exhausted all your resources, that is when you can go and approach your your mentor. So that element should not be missed, that you still have to do self-learning.
Yeah, that's an extremely good point, Mamatla, right? Having a mentor is not having ChatGPT that will answer all your questions for you on demand, right? It is you bringing something to the table, your opinion, what you've tried. I've tried the following 3 things. Which one do you think is the right approach? What is the right way? So a very good point. It's not just someone that's there to provide you with answers and do the work for you on demand.
Yeah, no, I just, Stephen, go for it.
You go, Stefan. You're good. I was just going to suggest it's a slight branch off topic, but it's really a good point with the ChatGPT thing. Is how do we think? Maybe a question to you guys. How do you think tools like that will change mentoring? So will people not want mentors when they can just put a question into ChatGPT and it gives them an answer and they think that's the absolute truth? Do you think mentorship has less value because those tools exist, or do you think it just changes the landscape?
I think it changes the landscape, but it makes mentorship even more important for someone who uses ChatGPT extensively. You'll quickly realize that it just gives you an answer. You still have to verify that answer and debate that answer, make sure that that is actually the right answer. An answer is a good thing, and we said it before, but is it necessarily the right answer? So I do think use it and take it to the mentor and say, I've done some research, this is what I do, I've tried OpenAI or ChatGPT or whichever one, and this is their answer. I kind of don't agree with this part, or I do agree with this part. What do you think? So I do think in the world of AI, it's even more important to have someone to bounce these things off.
But I completely agree. I think the good thing about having AI now is maybe that starting question in that I'm a newbie, I want to learn whatever, kind of map out my learning to me, or map out that training and show me sort of what does this roadmap look like towards me becoming somewhere, getting to somewhere or a certain level. I think that never existed before. So you typically got that from your mentor, almost guiding that ship in the right direction or pushing that car in the right direction. I think AI gives you that now, where maybe there is less of a need for those types of questions. But again, we were talking about the social elements of testing and the social aspect of mentoring. And I think that's something that AI can't address. I think that, yeah, there's definitely, I don't want to discourage using AI for mentorship, because I think it can actually mentor you. If it isn't it, can mentor you, but I would still provide guidance that a real life mentor is probably better, because you can bounce ideas, you can sort of mimic, that person can go to you into meetings where the other person or the AI can't, etc. So there's definitely benefits to having, I guess, both, using both to your advantage.
Yeah, especially the human aspect, Leon, I think is so important. I want to use an example. I was in a pre-sales call yesterday, and the salesperson was very stressed out because she has the material, she knows what's going on, but she hasn't been exposed to many of these, right? And I said, just come and listen to this. And after the hour pre-sales call, we had a discussion. Said it's so different the way you talk to people, the way you interact with people. And that is really what is important in this. She had all the material and all the facts and figures, but it's that part that was missing. And that you can only do through talking to people, right? And we said it, we're belaboring the point, but that is one of the key aspects to testing and anything in life is that interpersonal interaction. How do you do this? And if you have a senior person confidently doing that in their work environment and in their testing teams, you can learn from that, because those are the skills that you really get out of this. And those things, although you want to get it from ChatGPT, you don't necessarily get that there.
Yeah, try ChatGPT to help you with the developer that is rejecting your high severity bug. It's not gonna help you.
It can tell you what you should go tell him or her, but it's not going to be able to go tell him or her on your behalf.
Yeah, exactly that. It might give you a script to talk to, but it's not gonna what the person's like, their personality, your relationship with them, the company that you work in. It's just not going to know that information. The mentor can help you use that tool to give you the context.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to all give your opinions, yeah, would you advise or recommend everyone in the testing world to actually identify a mentor and find someone that can act as your mentor?
If you want, if you are willing to put in the time and really know what you want to get out of that, right? So what I don't recommend is finding someone and saying, "Oh, you're quite senior, mentor me." What do you really want to get out of that? As we said in the beginning of this call, it's a one-on-one, one-on-two kind of relationship building thing. So yes, have a mentor, but understand what it is you want to achieve through that process. I think it's important before you even start. So don't just jump in. And some people may not need it now. And it's also for you to understand, is this the right time for me to get there? Are there things that I can learn on my own before I just start interacting and building relationships with someone?
Yeah, I think my short answer is yes, Leon, but be wise in who you choose. Make sure that, I think you mentioned it earlier, Jan. I mean, a lot of people are out there sitting with knowledge, but getting that right personality fit is also important, because I think when you choose a mentor, you might think it's only going to be technical kind of information, but at the end of the day, to really get something out of it, you need to make yourself vulnerable and be willing to accept good advice. Also, sometimes it could be tough criticism, but you need to trust that person and make yourself vulnerable and allow that person to give you good advice. And sometimes it's not the news or information you want to hear, but you must trust that person enough to know that that person is saying it to you so that you can become a better version of yourself. So I think yes, but choose wisely.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, from this a level of maturity that you need. I think to answer your original question, Leon, yes, but there's a level of maturity that you need to be able to engage in that kind of relationship. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But I also think it's very context dependent. I think like there's times where mentors make much more sense. So landing a new role, a recent promotion, you've moved jobs, you've moved to a different company, a different industry. There's going to be much more benefit to getting that mentorship in that transitional period than you've been doing this for 10 years and you're kind of treading water, so to speak. It's maybe of less value or maybe more, but in my head, I've always found the benefit from mentors in those like transitional periods in my career.
I think what's also important to state is that it's actually okay to say no to someone that approaches you as well. So if you're already mentoring other people, or you don't have the mental capacity at the moment, or you're going through something, or you don't feel you're the right person, you need to be able to say no as well. And then obviously do that in the right way so that that person isn't completely put off from identifying the next mentor. And I think there's a whole skill around that as well, and an approach in terms of how you do that. But it feels like it's worse saying yes to someone when you're not necessarily going to have the time or be committed, and doing a half job, as opposed to saying to someone, look, at the moment, I honestly, I just can't do this. So I think that's okay as well. And the flip side is, once you've chosen a mentor and you've even asked someone to be your mentor, it's not a marriage. It doesn't have to be forever. And sometimes we make the wrong choices. So if you do identify someone that you want to be your mentor, and after a month or two you realize that this isn't working out, or I'm maybe not getting from this person that what I wanted, it's also okay to say to that person, look, I don't feel this is working. And especially so if you're a junior and you have someone as a senior mentor, I think it's okay. It's okay to say no in both those situations. And it's important for people to know that they can say that. I think we we've run out of time. We've run over time, definitely. Any closing thoughts, any closing comments before we wrap up?
Just good luck to anyone who's trying to find a mentor or mentee. I think it's a valuable pursuit for both sides.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how you should break up with your mentor with but you say it's not you, it's me. How do you break up? Do you break up in the same way as with your girlfriend?
Tread carefully. Tread carefully. Okay, so
yeah, so like in my case, I would say I learned that in sport, even the champions, they still have a coach. They still have managers. So if you want to succeed in software testing, the same, you still need somebody who will mentor you and coach you. So everybody needs a mentor.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for watching or listening. I think in summary, we big. I guess we see the value in mentors and mentorship, and mentoring isn't just for junior people. So even if you're a more senior person and you feel that you need some guidance or soundboarding, etc., definitely seek out those people that you feel can provide value to you in your current role or maybe in your career. So yes, thanks very much, and we'll see you in the next one.